Let's move on now to this story coming in from the US, and of course, indeed, being the breaking news that we see online. And of course, tensions have escalated between South Africa and the US. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has just posted on X that South Africa's ambassador to the US, Ebrahim Rasool, has been declared persona non grata. For more on this, we're now joined on the line by US correspondent Nick Harper. Nick, thank you so much for your time. Certainly breaking news coming in this evening from the US. We now understand that the South African ambassador, Ebrahim Rasool, has been expelled.
That's right, yes. An official statement coming from the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio on social media saying that South Africa's ambassador to the United States is no longer welcome, he says, in our great country. A slight spelling mistake, but Ebrahim Rasool is a race-baiting politician, Marco Rubio says, who hates America and hates Donald Trump. We have nothing to discuss with him, and he is considered persona non grata. Now, that is the official terminology for when an ambassador to another country that resides in that country is essentially facing expulsion. They are no longer welcome here in the United States, and they are not accepted within the role that they are carrying out. The US saying that they will no longer accept Mr. Rasool in this position of ambassador, and therefore he is likely to be recalled. This following videos that he posted earlier in the day on Friday that essentially detailed what he saw as problems with the United States. He spoke about the shock and awe tactics of the Trump administration over the last 7 or 8 weeks, the number of measures that they have been implementing, including cutting tens of thousands of jobs. But he also spoke about a supremacy assault by the Trump administration on multiple departments, and of course relations with South Africa during the last 8 weeks since Donald Trump returned to office have deteriorated dramatically. This now being, it would seem, the final nail in the coffin with the expulsion of the ambassador.
And Nick, one would even ask, I mean, certainly quite historic moments taking place in the Trump administration and in the US. Has South Africa ever seen one of the ambassadors being recalled by the US?
Well, that's not clear, but what certainly is clear is the fact that we have seen such a dramatic deterioration in relations, considering that these two countries, the United States and South Africa, up until recent months, had been considered strong international partners in multiple areas, whether it came to international trade and the economy, whether it came to diplomatic foreign policy relations. There were certainly ways that the two countries had worked together. But going this far to make such a strong statement on the international diplomatic stage really suggests a complete breakdown between the United States and South Africa when it comes to the relations between the two countries.
And what will this have when it comes to, the relations between the two countries? What impact will this have between the US as well as South Africa?
Well, detrimental relations now will be in place between the two countries. I mean, this destabilizes any sort of relationship that South Africa has had with the United States up until now. We have seen, of course, during the last couple of months of Donald Trump's return to the White House, very much a nationalistic approach with that America First policy front and center. His critics would suggest that he is trying to blow up relations with all international partners and allies. We've seen pushback with NATO countries, with European allies, even the nearest neighbours of Canada and Mexico, with multiple tariffs imposed on them, many of them now currently on pause, but still very much a destabilising effect over the last few weeks since Donald Trump returned. And those normal relationships, which I guess so much of the world, including South Africa, has relied upon up until now, are simply being undone. And those relationships that have stood the test of time would now be in a perilous position. This relationship now, it's unclear whether this can be overcome. A new ambassador will, of course, have to be appointed. But you would imagine that that ambassador would have to undergo significant and serious vetting to establish whether or not they would even be accepted by the United States, and whether that ambassador could potentially recover relations between the US and South Africa.
Is there any further reaction from the US following the news from Marco Rubio there?
Not that I've seen so far. Much of Donald Trump's afternoon has been dominated by a speech that he was giving at the Department of Justice, talking about trying to attack and, if necessary, prosecute political allies and adversaries. He has not weighed in, at least not that I've seen. I mean, it's likely that we could see other Republicans, as part of the Republican Party, getting involved to also express their reservations for this ambassador, to show their support for Marco Rubio. In turn, we have, of course, seen other Republicans in recent weeks very much backing up the Trump administration's dealings with South Africa. Those comments, those reactions are likely to come in the coming hours.
And Nick, I understand that right now, you know, the information can be quite limiting right now as we speak. And maybe if you can give us a bit more further information, do we know when exactly Mr. Rasool will be expected to leave America?
Well, normally in these type of situations, when an ambassador is deemed to be a persona non grata, that is something that takes immediate effect. It is unclear exactly how quickly he would be expected to leave the country, but the implicit implication in all of this, that it is as soon as possible. Now, it's not normally the case that ambassador would be frog marched to the airport and put on the next available plane home. But the expectation is that essentially relations between that ambassador and the country that they've been living in is severed almost as quickly as is possible. So we're heading into Friday evening here, Washington time. There is a chance that he will have to clear out of the residency in Washington during the course of this weekend and head home. We don't have an exact time frame of how all of this will play out, but from the United States point of view, this statement from the Secretary of State is final. There is no suggestion that they will back down from this. It is the ultimate in terms of diplomatic relations, in terms of diplomatic endings. This statement being very much the final word from the US administration. Marco Rubio also in that statement making it clear that the US had no further things that it would be willing to discuss with the ambassador as part of considering him now a persona non grata.
And how long can it take before South Africa, you know, can have the ability to replace Mr. Rasool in office, if you're saying that this is almost immediate?
It's not uncommon for countries to have periods where they do not have an ambassador in place with a particular country. I mean, here in the United States, we're going through a change of administration. The Trump is still working its way through its list of nominees that it wants to be ambassadors to various countries around the world. Some of these people just being suggested during the course of this week, and we're obviously 2 months into the Trump administration. So sometimes there are, I guess, fallow periods where there will be roles of ambassador in various countries that are not filled. I guess the determination now is on South Africa to see how quickly they can find a replacement candidate. Now, they may have someone already standing in the wings, but they will need to very much know that that person can work with the Trump administration, someone that is able to heal these divisions rather than making them worse. And I guess that will now be part of what will be an almost immediate vetting process that will need to take place. That really trying to establish whether the new candidate, the new ambassador, is in the right type of position to heal the wounds between the two countries rather than just sowing greater division.
All right, Nick, thank you so much for your time and for that insight. That's US correspondent there, Nick Harper, just giving us the breaking news coming in this evening, of course, with the ambassador of South Africa in the US being recalled by Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Aqui no Tal do Fato, trazemos análises inteligentes para te deixar sempre bem informado.